Hello, guys. There is a major signal for markets and maybe for crypto as well. Although it might be more for the stock market, I think it's worth mentioning. It has to do with the Iran Israel conflict. But we all know that crypto and the stocks sometimes move hand in hand. And you can see the last 3 days, crypto has moved down. Stocks have moved down, at least the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, essentially 3 days in a row. So they're still kind of correlated. But a big warning signal is that $20 billion have been pulled from global equity funds in a week as the Iran-Israel conflict worsens. It is going into week 2 right now. There is no ceasefire in the works. Iran has said that they would talk about a ceasefire if the United States told Israel to stop basically launching its attacks. And Donald Trump has said it is very difficult for the U.S. to tell Israel to stop launching its attacks, which means Trump doesn't really seem to be that interested in a ceasefire. The conflict is entering a second week, and they are continuing to trade blows. So I don't think anyone is going to call it off. And traders, at least in the stock market, are in a panic. So global equity funds saw 19.82 billion in outflows last week, the biggest in 3 months. US led the retreat with 18.43 billion pulled. So the US is like 95% of the money pulled, while Europe gained 640 million. Not really sure why Europe went up, but the US investors are backing out. And this actually might equal them backing out a little bit in Bitcoin, but especially in altcoins. Because I think the correlation between stocks is probably more with altcoins than Bitcoin, at least for the time being, as Bitcoin has a lot of buyers and it's building up its reputation as a store of value. And some people are starting to see it as a hedge. Altcoins doesn't have that. So the massive retreat totaled 19.82 billion by June 18th, probably bigger now, based on data published by LSEG Lipper, making it the largest weekly outflow in 3 months. 3 months ago, obviously, was the announcement of the trade war. So it takes massive events to really trigger this kind of sell-off. Investors yanked in the United States 18.43 billion out of US equity funds. Asia actually took out 2.86 billion. And of course, Europe somehow managed to put in 640 million. I guess Europeans don't mind the idea of an Israel-Iran war. So the stock market has actually turned sour. You might not see crypto as turning as sour, but remember, we did actually go down from 108 to 103. That is somewhat of a $5 billion drop. So still, not $5 billion, but that's still like a 5% drop or so. And we could actually go down even lower as we ticked down from 104 to about 103 right now. So the real demand was in bonds. So, this actually might help bond rates go down because there has been a lack of demand for US bonds recently. And that's why essentially, bonds have actually had to go up in yield, because without demand in them, they have to go up. Now, the yield might actually come down. So it could be a mixed blessing for Bitcoin if the yield rates actually come down. So global bond funds received 13.313 billion in net inflows, extending their winning streak to 9 weeks. Euro-denominated bonds alone bought in 3.07 billion after collecting 7.97 billion in the week before. Appetite also grew for short-term and high-yield bonds, which pulled in 2.93 billion and 1.94 billion respectively. So bonds are seeing more inflow. If you see bond rates coming down, that's probably the reason why more people want those things right now. So obviously, US stocks actually ended in the red. But, this is not really the kind of bond movement we want, at least not the trigger. Because if you look at the US crypto market, yes, we have gone down the last 3 days, especially on some of the altcoins. Coins that were doing hot like WBT and Hype have definitely come off their highs. Other coins like Dogecoin, Cardano have really kind of just completely fallen off. And most everything is down since the beginning of this week. So while it's good that bond yields have come down, it's definitely not good why they came down, because they had to take the stock market with it. And of course, the stock market is correlated to crypto coins. Obviously, Altcoins lost more than Bitcoin in all of this, as expected. But it's going to be hard to actually recover from this if the war continues on. And I think investors are just kind of like waiting to see what happens next. If there's an official declaration of war from the United States into Iran, I do actually think we will drop more. I can see like our bases in the Middle East coming under attack, and I can see us pouring a lot of money and resources to basically flatten Iran and completely eradicate its military. But that's kind of like how that side of things are actually going. This war is going to be very unpopular back at home. People are going to see gas prices go up, which is going to make the rest of everything else go up. Added in with the rest of inflation, the tariffs will slowly bring. And you can see the Fed basically not cutting rates until May of next year. So I do think this massive inflow out of the stock market this week, second only to when the tariffs were actually announced, is kind of a harbinger of maybe what's to come in the next couple of weeks, unless a peace treaty can actually be achieved, which is looking less and less likely now because Trump has refused to tell Israel to stop striking Iran. And I do see the U.S. basically getting into the war itself. So not a very good piece of news. I expect to see continued outflows next week as the war intensifies. And I hope the people at the UN could actually come up with some kind of mediation that leads to some kind of peace treaty, although I have my doubts right now. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.